This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed by the host of My Brain is a Wonderland are exactly that, views and opinions. This is Emily Ruth Henderson, and I'm the host of My Brain is a Wonderland, the podcast for neurodivergent women and the people who love them. In 2020, after a hellish pandemic, I was diagnosed with ADHD and autism. Surprise! Now, I am passionate about reaching other women just like me who've been pushed aside, ignored, and misdiagnosed for far too long. Each week, I discuss my experience navigating my 30s with these two life-changing diagnoses. There'll be highs, there'll be lows, and everything in between when you join me for Season 3 of My Brain is a Wonderland. Hello everyone, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. We are getting started on the third episode in the Masking Autism series. The last two episodes were about inattentive type masking symptoms, and this episode is going to be about hyperactive type. And just so you know, if you don't know, I have been diagnosed with combined type. So I have inattentive and hyperactive ADHD. And just before we get started, I just wanted to give a big shout out to all those of you supporting me and listening here. I did see that 2 more people put 5-star reviews on Spotify, and I'm so grateful for that. I know that most of us listening are neurodivergent, have inattentive ADHD, have all the things, a lot of pressure, a lot of stuff going on in our lives. And I'm the same way. I listen to podcasts all the time that I'm addicted to. I love them. I support them. I think they're amazing. And I've never rated them before. And I actually last night went through my favorite podcasts that I listen to all the time on Spotify. And I just hit that 5-star button because I'm asking you guys to all support me when I wasn't supporting the people that I know and love. And I think I totally get it. Like, I totally get it. You think about it, I'm going to do it. You don't do it, you forget about it. So here's what I'm going to say to you. Right now, pause the podcast and hit the 5 stars. Do it right now. I'll be here when you get back. Do it right now. If you're on Apple or Spotify, pause the podcast and hit a 5-star review. I'm not sure how it works on Apple because I don't have access to that. But on Spotify, it takes half a second, literally half a second. You have to have listened to, I think, at least 10 minutes of an episode to review. But I know there's hundreds of you listening who listen to all the episodes and haven't reviewed me because there's only, I think, 19 reviews on Spotify right now and 8 on Apple. So please, I'm imploring you, if you do like what you're listening to, pause the podcast right now, hit the 5-star, and come back. Thank you. All right, so let's get into the hyperactive masking symptoms. And I'll read out the little blurb here. And it's from ADD.org, which talks about ADHD masking symptoms. It says, hyperactive type ADHD typically involves fidgeting, talking excessively, being unable to wait your turn, or being unable to sit still. This form of ADHD may be masked as follows: staying silent in conversations or being extra cautious with your words. Absolutely. I am constantly worried about saying too much, being too much, inhabiting too much. I have this, it's got to be a neurodivergent thing. I say the truth to everyone all the time. And it's not gotten me in, it's gotten me in trouble at work, to be honest, where I don't realize maybe you shouldn't say this to a manager in another department, or they're not on the same level of you, so you can't reveal that information. I've been with people that I have kind of known at work a little bit, and then we hang out and I'm telling them my whole life story. I have ADHD and autism, my dad died, I grew up poor, blah, blah, blah. And I am so cognizant of that I have so much anxiety in social situations that in the present I do when I'm talking. Should I say this? Should I not say this? And that's masking. That's me not allowing myself to be my true authentic self. And my true authentic self is to be honest about who I am all the time. To say the things I said. Yep, I talk too much. I like to drink. My dad died when I was younger. I grew up poor. I'm a dancer. I love to do this. I love to watch that. Oh, that might seem weird. Does that seem eclectic? I'm too honest sometimes. And when I have to rein it in, it's so difficult because it feels like I shouldn't be doing it. Does that make sense? The whole narrative now, especially in mental health, which I super support, is your authentic self. Putting your authentic self out there. But I really think when you think about it, you look at it, you see people talking about that, doing that, it's not actually true. Are you actually saying to be your authentic self with your mom, your dad, your siblings, your mother-in-law, your father-in-law? I think with your spouse, you should be, and with your kids to an extent, but your job, to strangers. Do you think I should be putting myself out there this hardcore with all these people? I would like to, but it sets you up for failure. It sets you up for attack. It sets you up for these negative experiences. And so I do absolutely do that, where I'm sitting there. One of my favorite things, which I've talked about in the past, and I think it's related to my neurodivergency in that I just want to be honest and talk excessively about the things I love all the time. I love true crime. Always love true crime. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. There's discussions about, well, why are women obsessed with true crime? Because women are mostly victims of true crime. So it's like, let's get on top of it. But really, for me, I love the creative investigation part. I love the kind of problem solving, the kind of, was it this person? Was it that person? Look at the evidence, this and that. And also, when they catch the person, it's so invigorating as a human being. It's so like, you deserved to get caught, and they freaking caught you. For anyone who's into true crime, if you're looking for a documentary, something that will key you into that feeling, The Golden State Killer, which I think is called Alone in the Dark. This female journalist became obsessed with this crime where a man was traveling around California. I think he started kind of peeping, raping women. Sorry, trigger warning, we're about to talk about sexual assault and murder. Okay, here we go. He was going around raping women, and then it escalated to raping women and murdering them. It escalated to tying up couples, tying up the man while he raped the woman, threatened to murder both of them. I mean, it was awful. And this woman basically spearheaded an entire campaign to catch him. She ended up dying, unfortunately, completely unexpected. And then, I think a few months later or a year later, he was caught. This killer who'd been killing for 30, 40 years, and then he hadn't killed for like 10 or 20 years, right? Because you get old and, I don't know, you get stupid, I'm not sure. But he hadn't killed anyone, and they caught him. And now he's in prison. And these are stories that I had heard from when I was a teenager and was watching documentaries. And going back to, that was a tangent, but going back to when you say things you don't mean to say or don't want to say, or you think it's the right thing, but it's not the right thing, I will bring up in conversation, just casual conversation with work colleagues, in-laws, friends, whatever. They might be like, man, I love San Luis Obispo in California, or somewhere in California. And I have to fight the need, like it will come up in my brain. I have to fight it so hard to say, oh my God, do you know there was this serial killer who like killed it, and like tell the whole story. And to me, it's like, why don't you want to know all the things about this area? But most people want to know, you know, it has great beaches. What are the best restaurants? And I'm going, there was a murderer there. Like, why don't you care about this? And I've had so many times, and I've talked about this in the podcast before, where I've said something like, hey, this killer, or hey, slavery, and everyone, all of a sudden, the mood changes. We're empaths. We can feel it immediately. The face goes from, like, happy to, like, ugh, ugh. They get weird. You know that emoji where it's, like, the teeth are together, but it's like, ugh, he's not smiling, or he or she's not smiling. It's the yellow face. And the teeth is, like, out wide, and it's, like, ugh, awkward. That is me all day, every day. And I've had to actually... Oh, it's so difficult. It's so difficult when I'm talking to people and I literally just have to keep swallowing what I'm thinking. And I'm like, but wouldn't you want to know? And then, you know, the other part of my brain's going, no, they don't want to know. They don't want to hear about the murder, dude. Don't say it. And I'm like, but it's so interesting. Why don't... But they would want to know. They don't want to know. So that is part of masking, is knowing that these people don't want to hear it. And when you find those people where you're like, oh, I murder? And they're like, hell yeah, you found your people. But I struggle with that constantly. How much to say about myself, how much to reveal about myself, how much to reveal about what I'm interested in, how much to talk. Can be very, like monopolize the conversation, which is something I've worked on a lot. To rein it in and say, hey, what do you think? Instead of just giving my opinion and perspective and facts in a kind of spiel. I've really worked on reining that in and acknowledging that you need to do a back and forth. And this actually makes me think of, I know it's a little bit controversial in the community, but Love on the Spectrum. I watched the new series recently. And there is a therapist who has autism who is helping the people on the show with autism. And what she mostly does, that we see on the show, I'm sure she does other stuff, but we see on the show, she helps them do this back and forth like a tennis game with conversation. So she says to them, hey, what do you like about oranges? You know, whatever. She picks something they love, Disney, whatever, and says, what do you like about it? And then this autistic person will start monologuing. Just start monologuing. And actually what she does is she has a ball with her and they roll it across the floor. So the therapist will ask a question, then roll it to the person who's autistic opposite her that she's trying to assist. And this person might start monologuing. And she'll say, you know, you need to ask a question. You need to say, this is what I think about Disney, for example. What do you like about Disney? And then they throw the ball back. And she trains them how to have a conversation. And this is actually what happened to me. I've spoken about this before. When I was a dance instructor, I would monologue. When I was a ballroom dancing instructor. So your hands are in connection all the time. And you're teaching someone in a private lesson. And if you want to connect to someone, you have to have a conversation. Well, I was monologuing about me. And I'm from here, and this is what I like, and this is what dance is about. And they taught me that you have to, which felt robotic at the time, but that you have to say, this is what I love about dancing, and I really want to help you. What do you love about dancing? Then they would say back, oh, great. I love that too, or I don't, or this is my perspective. What do you think about this? You have to keep volleying the ball back and forth. That's a tennis term. My husband's listening. You're welcome. You have to keep sending kind of curiosity into the ether. So, or not the ether, into the atmosphere, into the person who's in front of you. You have to keep saying, I acknowledge what you just told me, and I heard it, and you have to try to actually hear it. I totally understand that sometimes it's like, that went in one ear and out the other. What do you think? But I'm telling you, if you start doing that, even if it feels robotic, you will start having more rich, fulfilling conversations where you're connecting with people and you don't come off as this monologuing, like, crazy person. So, yes, I do that. And I guess in some ways that is masking, because I wouldn't usually do that. Hey, what do you like? But, no one teaches you how to talk. No one teaches you how to have a conversation. I was thankful that I did get taught it. And I was 21 or 2 when I was in that job where I was being taught how to have a conversation with a student. And it really stood me in good stead for going forward in my personal life. So, yeah, super mask in that way. Good in some ways, always bad in some ways. You don't want to mask who you are, but that's life, man. All right, the second one. So it's hyperactive ADHD. This form of ADHD may be masked as follows. Suppressing your energy to appear calm. Ugh, man, I don't know if I've really gotten there on this, but yes. I bite my fingers all the time, which I think might be a stim versus energy overload. And I try to hide that from people, though that's very difficult. I also try to kind of temper down how I talk, which relates to the first thing I said, is I try to, you sometimes probably hear it when I'm talking on this podcast. I'm talking quickly. My voice is elevated. There aren't many pauses. It's like da-da-da-da-da, because it's like a stream of conscious coming out that I want to tell all of you. And thank God I don't have guests, because this would not work. But tempering my energy is something that is a little complicated, because I think actually my autism helps to temper my ADHD energy. Because it's so the other way. You want to be away, sensory overload, all the things. And so I think it helps in that area. I think if you probably have ADHD hyperactive only, that's probably going to be a lot harder to actually have to focus on and try to mask that. One of the things I know a lot of you listening probably pump your leg when you're sitting. You know the thing where your knee just goes da-da-da-da, like tapping? You're just, you're flexing your ankle hard, your foot, and your knee is just ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. And I see it all the time at work. People just talking normally, right? And then you see them in the meeting, and their leg is pumping like crazy. Like they're fucking, like they're pumping oil at an oil rig or something. It's like, like, it's just like a jackhammer. It's crazy. And I think that's one of those things where you kind of do that as a stim or an energy focuser, right? Like your energy's going into your leg so that it doesn't come out in the way you're talking. And I think a lot of people don't notice it. I've always seen it but not thought anything about it until I was diagnosed and was like, oh yeah, that's the thing that you do to redirect your energy. And so that is something that I do, not as much as some other people may be listening, like I said, just because I also have inattentive ADHD and also autism, which can kind of temper that hyperactivity. But when I'm in a zone, my hyperactivity, if I've eaten sugar, lots of different things, if I've had a stressful day, if my anxiety is living up here, my hand is above my head right now, then it will be quite difficult to manage. And it's not something I want people to see. I don't want people to see me like just living in this very tense, hyperactive atmosphere. So I do that. And yeah, I wish I didn't have to, but I don't know, honestly, how you would do that at work. The only thing I can think is that you have kind of an artistic career. I used to be a professional dancer. And because so much of my energy went into physically moving in that job, that actually I didn't bite my fingers as much. Almost never, in fact, because all of my physical energy went into that job. And I was a lot less hyperactive, actually, on that job, because I funneled all of that hyperactive energy into dancing. So I don't know if that's an answer there, but that's what I did. And the third one. Hyperactive ADHD may be masked as follows. Suppressing the urge to fidget or stim. Absolutely. I just talked about this, and I've talked about this many times before. Maybe I'll upload a photo in the notes. My fingers right now actually aren't super scabbed and bleeding. They're always red and swollen from the first knuckle up. They're a little bit bloody, but, sometimes it looks like a dog tried to eat my hands, like literally. And I try to suppress that because it's kind of disgusting. And I'm not saying that as a judgment to you, I'm just saying it as a fact. And I've thought about this recently, that imagine if someone licked their finger and then shook your hand in the workplace, right? And I'm licking my fingers all the time, not actually licking them, but chewing them. So there's saliva, like dried saliva and blood all over my fingertips. Honestly, most of the time. And then you go to shake someone's hand, or they see you chewing your fingers. It's not good. And I've talked about how I've tried to use a fidget spinner, and it's actually very useful, but it makes me feel anxious about... Well, it first made me feel upset knowing that I couldn't cure the stim of my hands. I just had to replace it with a fidget spinner, and I'm like, okay, so I have to fidget with this spinner every day, every hour for the rest of my life? Great. Love that. No. But it is what it is. But I do try to suppress that. If I have a fidget spinner at work, it's not like I'm in the meeting on the top of the desk fidgeting. It goes under the desk in my lap so no one can see it, because I'm two things. I am embarrassed by it. I'm not ashamed of that. I am embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that this is the life that I lead. I am embarrassed that I have to probably do this for the rest of my life to stop myself eating my own flesh. It's embarrassing, okay? And the other thing is that I know that if I show it to people, they will judge me. And it won't necessarily even be for, like, eating my fingers. It could be for anything. You don't know what other people are dealing with. You don't know their perspective, and so you don't know how they will judge you. And I'm so scared of being frozen out of a promotion, or being like, ew, I don't want to be around her, or whatever, like anything like that. And so I've never been able to sit in a chair for very long. I'm always one of those ones, if the chair rocks, if the chair spins, I'm spinning, I'm rocking. It's just what it is. And yeah, it's something I try to cover, because people go, oh, she has ADHD, or she's a mess, or what's wrong with her? And it does upset me, and it does freeze me out of promotions and connections and networking and things like that. So I do cover that. I wish I didn't have to cover anything about this, but I do. And so that's just the way it is. And then the fourth and final one is this is hyperactive ADHD may be masked as follows. Bottling strong emotions up. Ooh, baby. I don't even know where to start on this one, because I had such a complicated childhood. What came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. As you've heard before, I think my mom and my grandmother were neurodivergent. My grandfather, maternal, may have been, and my father definitely was neurodivergent in some way. And I was born to a teenage mom. My dad died when I was 4. They were already broken up. We grew up in government housing. It was really rough, okay? And my mom really went through it and was angry and upset and stressed 100% of the time. 100% of the time, she was probably one of those emotions. And so because I grew up with someone like that, I had to bottle a lot of my emotions. If I was upset, angry, defiant, anything, she would shut that down real quick, either by hitting me, degrading me, screaming at me. I've been screamed at in the shower naked. I've been slapped in the face. I've been, just a lot of different things. And so I bottled my emotions because of that, because I was afraid of getting hurt. I was afraid of being abused. But how is that separate from who I actually am and who I actually want to be? I'm not really sure. I still bottle my emotions a lot. Sorry, I don't mean to get emotional. I'm dealing with a lot with work right now, as you guys know from last episode. And whenever I talk about my abuse as a child, it just bubbles up. But I always feel like I'm too much. Who here has heard that? You're too much. You're too excited. You're too excitable. You're too hyperactive. You talk too much. You're too passionate about the things you love. You're too loud. You're too this. You're too that. I'm so tired of being too much. I'm so tired of being more than someone can handle. And actually, I just want to give a shout out to my husband, who I know is listening, who has really worked with me in this diagnosis that I've gotten with ADHD and autism, and has really accepted me for who I am, and has really said you're not too much. You are who you are, and I love you for who that is. And I think my sister-in-law and my mother-in-law, who were his mom and sister, have really been some of the only other people who I've really felt accepted me for who I am, in that they saw me at my most too much, right? They've seen me talking excessively, loudly, for a long period of time about nothing that they care about. They've seen me say murder when we're talking about oranges at the dinner table. Like, they have been there. I've known them for, I think, 17 years. And really, those people are the only ones who've ever seen every part of, or most that you can see. My husband has seen more than my mother-in-law and sister-in-law have, of course. And have said, you aren't too much. I love the muchness of who you are. And I love them for that. And I'm really tired of having to do that. I'm really exhausted from having to say, who I am is not okay. I'm so freaking tired. And I'm less tired than I used to be, because now I'm diagnosed, and I also have that acceptance from my family. I've always had it, but once I got diagnosed, it was even more so. And I'm just tired of dampening myself down, of being something I'm not. I'm so tired of bottling up who I am. I'm so tired of pretending. And this podcast allows me to not pretend anymore. Even if people at work don't know, if there's people in my family that don't know that I have ADHD and autism, I can be my true, authentic self at home with my husband and right here with all of you. And I'm so grateful that all of you are listening to this. I'm so grateful that we have this community. I can't see you, you can't see me, but we are here together, and you are listening to me, my authentic self, and I am feeling you listening to me as my authentic self, and I love that. And I say masking has its place, but I don't like the place that it's become, that we've had to make of this place. And so the more I can do to unmask and be true to myself, I think will allow all of you to do the same thing. And that's it. That's the end. of the Masking ADHD series. We did 2 episodes on inattentive type, 1 episode on hyperactive. I am, because I know that so many people listening have ADHD and or autism, I'm going to flip. The next episodes are going to be masking autism. So the symptoms of masking autism. And then when I'm done with that series, I'm going to talk more about tips for helping you unmask, consequences of unmasking, what it means for us in society to do so, what it means for us in our lives, the benefits, the negatives. And I hope you stick around for all of that, because I think we're really working towards something here. And I'm so glad you guys are all with me. Tune in next week for the next episode. It's going to be Masking Autism. And I will see you again on My Brain is a Wonderland Season 3. Don't forget to hit that 5-star review button.